Kickstarters. What an absolute shit show those have been in the past. After seeing the other Kickstarters that launched around the same time, namely Yooka-Laylee and Mighty No. 9, I came into Koji Igarashi's spiritual successor to the Castlevania series, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, fearing the worst. But I wasn't let down. If you, like me and many other disgusting nerds, have been waiting for an experience like Symphony of the Night or Order of Ecclesia or any of the other fantastic Metroidvania games, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is right up your alleyway. It's a game with a clear focus on being true to its predecessors and providing an old school yet new experience for players. It has many mechanics reminiscent of older Metroidvania titles, yet also throws in some new stuff to keep it fresh and interesting. While the gameplay is on point, the game does have a few shortcomings, such as its story and that its visuals aren't exactly groundbreaking either. But what Bloodstained does right is create the experience that we were hoping for when it was first announced as a Kickstarter way back in 2015. Despite its flaws, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is well worth the price for any Metroidvania enthusiast and is a worthy successor to the games that came before it. Perhaps the best thing that Bloodstained does is to capture what made the gameplay of the Metroidvania game so fun while still mixing it up a little to create a new experience. The combat is great, it's very true to the classic Metroidvania style. No big flashy combos, no stupid ass quick time events, simply swing your weapon, use your abilities and get shit done. It's very faithful to the Metroidvania style, all the way down to having certain features like animation cancelling, so veterans of the genre should be able to jump straight back into this without much problem. It's extraordinarily reminiscent of the Sorrow games, more so Dawn of Sorrow. The shard system was very clearly inspired by the dominance ability from these games, and the ability to use items and shards to upgrade your abilities and create new weapons was a real throwback to Dawn of Sorrow in particular. Like the Sorrow games, you have the chance to obtain a shard from every single enemy, and they all offer different abilities and bonuses that allow you to play with different builds and strategies to really embellish the combat. Bloodstained also has far more of a fixation on enemy drops and gathering materials to help you progress and upgrade your abilities and equipment. The alchemy mechanics of forging new weapons and upgrading your shards was a very nice addition and served the gameplay well. Your abilities are a little more in depth than they are in the Sorrow games, however, and the game really utilizes this not only with combat abilities but progression abilities that allow you to delve further into the castle. In true Metroidvania fashion, this game will lock certain areas behind different abilities and gives you that satisfying sense of progression once you do unlock a new move that allows you to go deeper into the castle. Bloodstained does a good job at showing you without explicitly telling you when you need a new ability to progress. Well, for the most part anyway. It does sometimes feel a little obscure as to what you have to do or where you have to go, like this. I don't really know how I feel about this. You might find yourself wandering around trying to figure out what the heck you have to do quite a bit, especially if you're a complete idiot like me. The controls are really good and the platforming is tight. The way that the levels have been laid out works well with it, and re-exploring the map is always a good idea to pick up a few extra items or trinkets that you couldn't reach before. There's also a bunch of hidden areas and items behind the wall rubble, which had me hitting pretty much every single wall on the map, which I think is the sign of a true Metroidvania game. Bloodstained also has multiple different endings, the bad ending, the slightly less bad ending, and the good ending, and there's a good chance that you get one of the bad endings before you get the good one. There are also harder difficulties, being hard and nightmare modes, and the game allows you to clear a save which brings over all of your weapons and upgrades other than important abilities such as your double jump and so forth, which all really embellish the game's replay value. This game is great for completionists. There are plenty of different enemies to kill, items to collect, and the game will keep track of all of it for you. If you're the type to froth at the mouth about 100%ing a game, this game accommodates for your pathetic ways. One thing that was a little bit disappointing was the boss fights. Apart from a few of them, they were all really easy. The bosses didn't seem to have a lot of health, and if you had a decent shard ability, you could kill them pretty quick. I mean, look at this big dragon fucker here. He's gonna be hard, right? Oh, damn, he just slapped the shit out of me. Let's watch the remainder of this fight. Are you fucking kidding me? I think some of that was down to me being very familiar with the genre and how the combat works, though really if you get a decent directional shard ability and invest in it early on, you're usually set for the rest of the game. I practically used one all the way till the end. I did find the game to be a little bit short as well, especially considering I spent quite a while running around the map trying to figure out where to go next, as you do with games like these. Before too long, the game was finished. The story kinda sucks, a little. Let's be perfectly honest, you don't play a Castlevania game, or in this case a spiritual successor to the Castlevania games, for the story. I found the concept and lore pretty interesting, though the dialogue and pacing is a bit off. It's all a bit cliche and lame. Not all of the dialogue was terrible though, it's certainly more modern and less painful than Symphony of the Night, and is often quite humorous at times as well, which was a nice touch. Without spoiling anything, the ending was quite sudden and a little anticlimactic, which was also a bit disappointing. The game also seemed to lack a bit of overall polish. I encountered a few bugs and annoyances on the way through. One time I wasn't able to jump out of water until a big fish came and hit me, and sometimes items would drop but I wouldn't be able to pick them up. Things like this really ought to be ironed out before release. But it wasn't just the bugs. One of the most unpolished parts of the game was the animation. General gameplay animations were mostly fine, as were most of the enemies, but the cutscene or action animations were choppy and pretty stiff. Visually, the game's pretty average. It's not bad, but it's not great either. I personally would have preferred to see a more stylized and probably a 2D scope as opposed to the 2.5D look they've gone for. Something more akin to the original concept art would have been more up my alleyway. I guess the 2.5D scope worked as it allowed for rooms to not be perfectly two-dimensional in layout, most notably on the tower level where you will spiral around it, though this did also come with some slightly questionable hitboxes as well. On a pure visual level, it's not particularly impressive. Impressive enough, but it can't help from looking a little bit like a Unity mod at times. You don't get the same level of visual clarity between the foreground and background that you did get in the older games or in a game like Hollow Knight, which is where I believe the 2D stylization would have really shined. The art style and aesthetic is consistent throughout, however, and I did enjoy the more gloomy and gothic style that we've come to know from the Metroidvania games over the years. One visual aspect I did enjoy was the amount of character customization there was. In Symphony of the Night, your cape would change depending on what you had equipped, but in this, you're able to actually see hats, accessories, scarves, and even a few other equipable items on your actual player model, which I thought was pretty neat. You could also visit a cursed barber and change your hairstyle and the colours of your clothes, which was also pretty cool. All inconsequential, but a nice addition nonetheless. The voice acting for the most part was pretty good, to be perfectly honest. I wasn't expecting much from it, but I particularly enjoyed having David Hayter in there.
I'm trying to sneak around, but I'm dummy thick.
That being said, I think the game being completely voice acted wasn't the greatest idea. As much as you can talk shit about Symphony of the Night being fully narrated, there wasn't a lot of dialogue in it, whereas this game has dickloads of it. I feel it would have benefited from ditching the complete narration and going for something more akin to the other Metroidvania games, barring Symphony of the Night of course, or something like the Fire Emblem games, because the full narration was just a bit long-winded and unnecessary. Save it for the cutscenes. I am glad that they fixed that horrendous lip sync from the initial trailer, however, though I am still a little bit concerned for how Miriam is standing for most of the dialogue. That cannot possibly be good for her spine. The game is also absolutely chock-a-block full of references. I mean, they've even got Shovel Knight in here, and this guy is definitely not just Alucard. One thing that I was really hoping would be good about this game was the music, and I was not let down at all. As soon as I opened the game and the main menu music started playing, I knew that the soundtrack was going to be great. The game had Michiru Yamane composing the music, so I should have expected nothing less. That being said, some of the stages such as Arventville had no music, and while you can argue that that's meant to be atmospheric or whatever, I think that a stage not having music in a game that boasts such a great soundtrack is just a strange design choice. Overall, I think that this Kickstarter campaign has been a success. While it may not be the most appealing game on the market to newcomers, Bloodstained is almost exactly what longtime fans of the genre were hoping for. Most of my gripes with this game are more to do with the visuals of the story, which neither I believe are particularly terrible. The gameplay and mechanics are very solid and very reminiscent of the games that came before it. This may also be a little detrimental to the game's success as a standalone, however, as I think this game feels more like fan service to Metroidvania fans and may struggle to pull in newcomers to the genre, especially considering its price point, though it's clear that there are still many people out there that enjoy games like this. And that's not to say that it brings nothing new to the table. While it has many similar mechanics to games like Symphony of the Night or Dawn of Sorrow, it builds upon these with its own new ideas and mechanics that help this game to be a wholly new experience rather than just something we've played before. And look, I'm pretty mad that they didn't put any Whoopers in this game considering it's on the Switch as well. Like, come on, they could have had a Whooper Familiar or a Whooper Hat or something. But I mean, hey, Pokemon Sword and Shield is for Switch and it probably won't have Whoopers in it either, so we can conclude that Nintendo are fucks. Though it may not go down as the greatest Metroidvania game to ever grace the genre, Bloodstained should certainly go down as a worthy successor to the great games that came before it. And most importantly, Konami can get fucked.